Hello everybody. Guess what we're going to be talking about today? Drones. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for commenting on my last video about Sombrio and the waterfalls there. Today I'm back in the Vancouver area and I've come out to Golden Ears Provincial Park, and I thought, you know what, why don't I do a small video on flying drones, because everybody likes to comment about my drone footage in each of my videos, and it's such an important part of most of my videos, not all of them. Now, for those of you that have seen my videos, you'll notice that I like to fly in areas like this, and that's kind of what I'm going to concentrate on today. I will say that I keep my settings very basic. I don't use an awful lot of what this drone has to offer. There are a couple of things that I will go over to kind of help you go through your own checklist if you do want to fly in environments such as this, in woodlands and forests and such. Okay, now before I get into some of the techniques that I use for flying in environments like this, I just want to go over a few basic things and some of the equipment that I use that's made my life easier. Before I do that, I just want to say that you have to remember with any kind of drone, it's still a camera. So all of the things that you do when you're taking a photograph with, say, your DSLR or your mirrorless camera still apply to using a drone. So you still need good light, good composition, and a subject matter to photograph. And the problem with drones is that because it's an aerial image, sometimes it'll take you quite a long time, maybe 1 or 2 batteries, to actually find a composition, because it's not like you can look through your camera and just wander around. You have to actually go up in the air and try and search for a composition. I mean, usually in my case, I'll usually have a bit of an idea of the subject that I want to photograph, obviously, but trying to find a good angle is, a lot of the times, is not as easy as you think it's going to be. So for that reason, I generally carry 3 batteries. It'll take me 1 or 1.5 batteries to at least find a composition before I even get going. The batteries last maybe 15-20 minutes tops with this guy. I'm not sure with the Mavic Air. Another item that I highly recommend that you get are the Polar Pro or similar ND filters. Now this one has 3 in it. I think you can also buy packs of 6. It has an ND filter of 4, 8 and 16. And the reason why you really need these is that the Mavic Pro especially, and I think the Mavic Air probably, it has a fixed aperture, so you can't change the aperture. So you can only change the shutter speed and the ISO. And when you have really sunny conditions, or even conditions like today where it's quite bright, it's very difficult to get that shutter speed down low enough so that it creates that nice smooth video. Now here's an example of a waterfall that I photographed at 1/1000th of a second. And as you can see, it's a little bit choppy, and that's because I forgot to bring my ND filters that day. So it's capturing each individual frame tack sharp, whereas really for waterfalls and any moving subjects, you really want a little bit of blur in there. So usually around 1/50th to 1/60th of a second is perfect for video and motion. And that's why you need ND filters, is to cut down on the amount of light that's reaching the sensor. Okay, so the idea is to get as smoother video footage as possible. And when you get your drone, especially from DJI, they're usually factory set so that the left-handed toggle or joystick is set so that if you push it forward, you go forward, you pull it back, you go backwards, and you push it left and right, you go left and right. The left-handed toggle or joystick is set so that if you push it forward, you go up, pull it back, you go down. But then if you pull it to the left or right, it'll physically turn the drone left and right. Now, when I'm flying in woodland or any other time actually, I generally try not to touch the the left joystick so that I'm physically turning, because what that does, it actually it jars the video and it doesn't come out quite as smooth as I'd like it. So when I am steering, I just use the right-handed joystick, and then of course if I want to go up and down, I'll just pull the left joystick up and down. I found that to be the best way to get the smooth footage that I need. Obviously sometimes you do need to physically turn the drone, and if I'm going to do that and I have enough space, I'll do it very slowly so that it's not so noticeable, because if you do it quickly, you know, it just kind of ruins that nice smooth video footage. Okay, the first example I'm going to give some tips on is flying in forests and close to branches and trees and such. You may have noticed that in a lot of my videos I'll be flying backwards rather than forwards, and I personally find that when you reveal something that you can't see ahead of you, it just makes the video that much more dramatic. So a lot of my footage I'm flying backwards, and then all of a sudden you'll be right close to a tree or a branch or something like that. What you don't see is that in a lot of that footage I'm actually very close to the drone. In some cases I'll be running behind it or following it. So what I usually do is I'll search for an area where there's a clear path through the trees, or I can kind of figure out a path without jarring the footage too much, like doing sudden turns. Now this area here I've used in a number of my videos, actually twice, so we'll use this as an example. The only problem with this now is that this tree has fallen over in the background, so it's kind of blocked some of that path. But what I'll do is find a path right through the forest, and also clear enough that I can run behind the drone. So imagine I'm flying the drone right now. I would just follow it through, so I'm standing right behind it. And the reason why I want to stand right behind it is because you want to be able to see any little branches or leaves that might get in the way and might actually get caught in the propellers. And if that happens, then you're going to crash for sure. Well, 9 times out of 10 you'll crash, which is what we're trying to avoid, right? So there's a nice path right through here, but this area is quite blocked now, so there isn't any really clear path. It might take a bit of maneuvering. Now I've just noticed that over here there is a hole, but it's pretty tight. So if you do find a path and you don't feel comfortable about it and you're kind of umming and ahhing, then that's probably a good indication that maybe you should try something a little bit easier, and then slowly build up to more complicated flights through forests and that. So why don't I get the drone going, and then I can kind of show you what I'm talking about. Okay, I've opened up the app, and the first thing I want to do is change some of the settings. So we're in video camera mode right here, and I'm just going to click on the settings at the bottom here. Now under the camera icon, video size, I usually leave it at 4K, 24 frames per second. And if I want to downsize, then I'll just do that. Usually for YouTube, I just go to 1080. But there are a couple of things here that I would make sure that are on. White balance, I would always set it at something. Auto white balance works very well, except that if the light changes while you're flying, it's extremely hard to color grade when you're post-processing the video. So it's just easier if everything's the same balance throughout the whole video. So I just generally leave it at the sunny setting. Style. Now this one's quite important. When I first got this drone, I had everything set at 0, including the sharpness. But what would happen is anything below or 0 or below, and there would be some kind of noise reduction would kick in, and a lot of my footage looks quite kind of mushy. So I always keep it at +1. Sometimes it looks a little bit crispy, but I'd rather it be crispy than mushy. So contrast, I just leave at 0, sharpness +1. Okay, so we'll just go back here, And color I just leave on de-cine like. Camera settings, as you can see, you can change the ISO and the shutter speed, but you can't change the f-stop because it's fixed. And that's where the ND filters come in. I try to leave it at 100 ISO as much as possible. Sometimes I'll have to kick it up a few notches. The highest I would go is 400 ISO. And lastly, the histogram I generally leave on all the time because it's a great way to tell whether you're exposing for highlights and such. And the histogram is this box right here. Now, if you're flying in forests, a lot of these new drones will have object avoidance. And for most of my flights, I actually turn object avoidance off. And the reason why I do that is because whenever you get close to a tree or a branch, all of a sudden your drone will stop. If it's snowing out or drizzling, then your drone will keep stopping because it keeps thinking there's something in front of it. So if you're new to flying, then you might want to leave that on for now, but eventually you'll want to turn it off for certain flights. Something else that's quite important is the gimbal and the pitch and so on. So if you click in the gimbal icon, that's the camera with the little line above it, and go into advanced settings, you'll see there's a number of different settings here. Gimbal pitch speed I have set at 9. Enable upwards gimbal tilt limit to 30 degree. I turn that on because sometimes I want to be pointing my camera up. The reason why they have that is in some shots you might end up including the propellers. I haven't noticed that very often with the drone that I have. Gimbal pitch smoothness, this is very important. I leave it at 25, which is quite dampened, but it gives you that nice smooth footage that you need for cinematic type shots. So, right, we're ready to fly. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this case is usually when I'm going backwards, I would be behind the drone so that you can't see me. But in this case, I'm going to stand in front of it so you kind of see what I do when I am taking footage with the drone, especially with video. So the first thing I do is make sure that my camera settings are where I want them. So I'm just going to take off here. Okay, now the very first thing that I would do is I would go into my different modes. Now there's normal, quick shot, gesture, I mean there's a whole bunch of them. And to be honest with you, I only really use one or two of them. The one that I use the most is tripod mode. And what tripod mode does, it really slows the drone down, but that's what gives me that cinematic kind of footage that I want. It's excellent in forests like this because the speed isn't too fast that you're going to suddenly speed up and crash into something. It works really well with waterfalls and going over the ocean as well. The problem with it is that it's a little bit too slow. Now some of the footage I do speed up, but the problem with waterfalls and the ocean, if you speed it up, then it looks unnatural. So I'm just going to turn the drone around, and you'll see it's going quite slow. So now you're looking at me. I'm just going to go up a little bit, and then what I'm going to do is just turn the camera on so it's recording, and just back up a little bit so I'm back here, and I'm just going to bring the drone at a steady pace through this area here. I'll just back up a little bit more here, and we'll just bring it forward, but we'll try and fly it as close to the branches as we can. Now we're going to go up. Okay, now that footage might have been a little bit jarring because I suddenly stopped and went up. So the idea is to try and keep it as smooth as possible. And the way you do that is by slowly moving your sticks either up, down, or to left to right. So we're just going to go over to the side here. Okay, now I'm going to go forward through this hole here. So I'm standing right behind the drone here, so I can see exactly where it's going and if there's any branches above it or below it or to the sides. And that's really important, that you have visual contact with your drone so that you can see exactly where it's flying. And if you want to get really close to something, then you can do that without crashing it. So I'm just going to go through the woods a little bit here. I see a direct path through several trees here, so I'm going to go quite far back here. Okay, that's good. Now the drone is kind of moving around here because we don't have much GPS signal, so it does hover a little bit and move around, so you have to be careful here. Okay, and now I'm going to slowly bring it backwards and I'm going to steer it with my right joystick. Okay, now I'm going to bring it down so it goes over a log really close. And then it's going to come through this hole here. And then we're going to go up. And we'll stop there. So you can see, I mean, it doesn't give you a perfect example, but as I'm steering it with my right joystick, it's not really moving the camera around. Now if I steered with my left joystick, you'll notice that it's quite jarring on the camera here. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the technique that I use to fly through forests. All right, everybody, that's it for this week. I do hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you picked up a couple of tips about flying a drone in this type of environment. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments below. I will try to get to them at some point. If there's one thing that you want to take away from this video, I would say that would be to be as conservative as you possibly can when you're flying in this type of environment. Don't overdo it with the speed, and ideally, if you can have line of sight with your drone either from behind or in front at all times, that'll really help in preventing any types of crashes. All right, thanks ever so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to give me a thumbs up, and until next time, happy shooting. All right, cheers everybody, bye.